Boom. Good morning, legends. So, an SAS colonel has called out the Khazarian Mafia. Can you believe it? Let's take a look. Morning team, I hope this finds you utterly incredible on this weekend. I hope I haven't caught you all in bed with your hangovers. Spiritual battle, folks. No, seriously, I'm Chris THRALL. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando. I'm also English Veteran of the Year for inspiration. And that's what we do, isn't it? Inspiration and more importantly, cutting through this nonsense that we're now living in and that's now been putting onto our children, and it stops here, doesn't it? It stops with us because our reality is a product of how we think. We're going to be looking at this chap. In fact, let's go straight to it.
The Russians are fighting the Khazarian Mafia in their homeland. They're cutting the head off the snake of the group that has been destroying this planet for generations.
What does that have to do with Australia today, here and now?
Because they control this country like they control everywhere else, and the Russians, along with many other nations and many other militaries, are actually fighting a subterranean war to exterminate vermin from the planet.
How does that relate to the...
Okay, so he's called out a group called the Khazarian Mafia, which not a lot of people know about, let's be honest. I first heard about them from the wonderful David Icke, who's been on the show. If you want to have a look through our podcast list, you can see the fascinating chat I had with David. In fact, if you want the unedited version, which I suggest you do, get onto our Locals Planet. You'll see the link. Our Locals platform, you'll see the link below. But right off the bat, friends, we're a channel about peace, love, kindness, and empathy, and we love all beings on this planet. We won't take accusations of racism or nonsense lightly, so have a think before you leave silly comments. This is simply a chat about understanding the possibilities of why we're in this utter mess, where the media, the mainstream media, not a health authority or a government, but the mainstream media can tell you to stay in your house for 3 years, and people just do it, or they tell you to get down to the health center on the corner for a certain procedure, and like everybody just does it. So let's acknowledge here we have a problem, don't we? We have a serious problem. Let's take this a bit at a time. So who are the KM? This is quite a disputed, like a lot of things in this area, folks. You're gonna see people dispute it. This is something you have to do the research on and make your mind up. Do you think that life's going our way, and all these politicians and leaders, they're doing their job because they love you and they have your best interests at heart? Or do you think that possibly they might be puppets that are all being controlled? Coming on to the KM, this was a report done in Veterans Today. You can still find this in veteranstodayarchives.com. And they called their piece "The Hidden History of the Incredibly Evil Khazarian Mafia." And whatever you think of this article, it's nice, isn't it, that veterans are actually stepping up to the plate to at least address this stuff and protect the future for the children. But here we go, in no particular order, folks. So this is the editor's note. The history of the Khazarians, especially the KM, the world's largest organised crime syndicate, that the Khazarian oligarchy morphed into their deployment of Babylonian money magic. We're going to come on and talk about that. In fact, let me just flag up. I can see Mike's in the chat. Mike put me in touch with this book here. If you want to understand what's going on the planet, folks, you have to read this. You have to understand how the money supply, which was a simple system of exchange before, like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, used to use cockle shells, believe it or not, as the coin, how that was subverted, how that was infiltrated, and how all the leaders, the churches, the kings, the queens, the rulers were basically told, look, your job ain't to look after your people. Your job is to accumulate gold in your cellar as much as you can, because that's what makes you a good person. Can you see, friends, where life started to go wrong 8,000 years ago? And how this system, it's called money magic, it's creating money that doesn't exist through a system called usury, which is, you can think of that as charging interest. And if you, for the Christians amongst you, you'll remember Jesus got very angry about that, didn't he? Or Yahshua. He threw people out the temple for money lending because he could see where it was going to end up for all of us. But going back to our article, the editor's saying that this history's almost been excised from the history book, so erased, basically. The present-day KM knows it cannot operate or exist without abject secrecy, therefore has spent a lot of money having its history excised from the history books to prevent people learning about evil beyond imagination and the powers of the world's largest crime cabal. Now, I would question there, folks, why is it when you type something like KM into a search engine like Google that it offers you no suggestions? But if I type into Google, fat guy rides a pig, I'm going to get like 57. This is the way my mind worked. I'll be interested to know, do you think similar? Do you think that this Silicon Valley software or applications seems to be, it seems to have an underlying theme of control behind it? The authors of this article have done their best to resurrect the lost secret history of the Khazarians and make the history available to the world via the internet, which is the new Gutenberg Press, or Gutenberg Press. That's being the, if I understand rightly, that was the chap who invented the printing press, was it? Back in about the 1400s or something. Now, I won't read you the whole article, folks, but let's just read some. It's saying that at a Syrian conference on combating, I don't want to say that word, but it begins with T, and it's when things go bang to scare people, that T word. At this Syrian conference on that subject, a senior editor and director, Gordon Duff, disclosed publicly for the first time that World T is actually due to a large organised crime syndicate associated with Israel. We're going to come on and talk about that, folks. And just remember, I'm just a podcast host. This is on the internet, right? I'm not saying I agree with all of this, but I've kind of got my take on it. We're going to come and look at a subject called name stealing, which is where you take on someone else's identity or religion so that you can do your naughtiness pretending to be someone else, which is a trait that's been linked to the KM. So this is where Khazaria was back in the around about 800, the year 800. This is where my cursor's scrolling. This is the Black Sea. Sorry, this is the Black Sea. Is it the Caspian Sea to the right? So above the Black Sea, lo and behold, it's Ukraine, isn't it? This area here. And this area to the right of the Khazarian kingdom is what is now modern day Kazakhstan. So still seems to be a tie with the name there. From 100 to 800 AD, an incredibly evil society emerges in Khazaria, ruled by an evil king that had Babylonian black arts and occult oligarchs serving at his court. So this is Babylonian magic, folks, or the Babylonian mystery schools, the ancient art of understanding what we would now refer to as nanoscience or quantum physics, how this whole thing that you and I are involved in, how it all works, with a focus on energy. Back in those days, the energy was the sun, which is why you see a lot of sun symbolism. In this day and age, it's the philosophers are more looking at the energy, how energy is manipulated to create reality. That's another subject again. So, an example of this Babylonian magic is the money magic, which we said, which is having banks that have nothing in their vaults, just a computer screen, and they type up on that computer screen numbers that don't exist. Then they lend those numbers to you, but you have to pay back money that does exist. You see how the scam works. During this time, Khazarians became known to surrounding countries as thieves, murderers, and road bandits for assuming the identities of those travellers they were going to say oft. Make this a wee bit bigger for you. They oft as a normal occupational practice and way of life. In 800 AD, an ultimatum was delivered by Russia and the surrounding nations. So they're basically saying, oi, we're fed up with you guys. Either you change your ways and you pick a religion, one of the Abrahamic faiths, so Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, or we're going to come down heavy on you. So the Khazarian king, he had a look at these religions. He thought, do you know what? I think Judaism, that's the one that let's just pretend that we're let's just pretend we're Jewish. Notice I say pretend, folks. We're not talking about the wonderful, beautiful people of Israel or the Jews worldwide, of which I know many, and I'm proud to call them my family. We're talking about pretenders here. It's really important you understand this. Otherwise, you're going to fall for the divide and conquer, which is their MO, division. And do it, if you believe in this theory, that is, you'll see it's all based upon division and cutting people off from the spiritual journey. Anyway, so they picked Judaism. It says here, but secretly they kept up their occult ceremonies. This is not really, occult just means secret language, folks. So I would be an occultist because I, practice spirituality. The art of getting in touch with spirit, which is energy essentially. But this is like the dark occult, the dark arts featuring, I don't want to say that word there, but offering up children, can we say, and drinking their contents, if you get my euphemism. A lot of practices which have been sort of flagged up in recent times, haven't they? I'm not saying that, folks. I'm just pointing it out. So they've kept up all this kind of dark stuff. This goes back to scriptural times. For example, it talked about Baal there, Baal worship. Baal is the bull. So if we go to our scriptures, you remember Moses in the Old Testament. This is why I don't bash Jewish people, folks, right? I think the people that control the planet, me personally, are pretenders. They pretend to be other people so that those people get in trouble, right? But anyway, you got Moses here. He's been up on the mountain. He's done his mindfulness, so his meditation. He's connected with Spirit, and Spirit has told him there's a certain way to live your life with righteousness that will allow you to connect with the everything, the all, which in the Bible they refer to as God, don't they? But when he comes down from the mountain, he has a bazzy on, because he finds out while he was gone, they all lost faith in the Spirit, in the everything, and they went back to their old ways of Baal worship, worshipping the devil. They built themselves a golden calf. And what they were doing, hang on, there's our man. Oh dear. I've forgotten the. One sec. I'll ignore it. I had a picture of Moses with his staff, and do you remember when he had his staff and he threw it down? What happened? It turned into a snake, didn't it? That's representative. The staff is righteous living. Goes back to the staff of Hermes in ancient times. The snake is representative of the Kundalini energy that you have contained in your spine, that upon release triggers the serotonin and DMT in your brain, like milk and honey. Hence, you enter the land of milk and honey. So can you see how Judaism is based on these books in the Old Testament that are all about enlightenment? So that's a good thing. These chaps we're talking about today, they practice something else, don't they? Which is not a good thing. So, yes, so going back to our article. Sorry, folks, it is early on a Saturday. So, yeah, and they're also known to worship the owl, and the owl was Moloch, wasn't it? And even today at Bohemian Grove, which is where all the US elite, I think the Republicans generally tend to be Republicans. They go and have their cremation of care ceremony in Bohemian Grove, which is a giant redwood forest. And they have their ceremony in front of this giant owl, which upsets people because, of course, it goes back to occultic Babylonian practices. So, hope this is making sense, folks. Back to the article. And we're now up to 1200 AD. Russia and the surrounding nations have had enough and they take action. So they come in and they want to kick the arse of the Khazarians because they're still up to their bad ways, even though they're pretending to be in religion now. But the Khazarian leaders have a well-developed spy network, and they receive warning and escape into Europe, taking with them their vast fortune in gold and silver. They lay low, regroup, and assume new identities. Okay. Coming on down here, I won't make too much of this, folks, but it talks about how the KM invades England, controls the crown, controls the money supply here, was the force. You're gonna, if you do research on this, you're gonna find they're the force behind the, the Napoleonic Wars, etc., etc., etc. Allegedly, talking about here how the KM infiltrates all world banking using Babylonian black magic. The secret art of making money from nothing using the power of usury, so money lending. And that is that's about it, folks. I did have something else for you. Oh yeah, this is where it gets interesting. So, are you familiar with Monkey? Do you remember the TV series where Tripitaka played a monk who was journeying to the west, and she had her bodyguards? One was Monkey, and the other was Pigsy. If you're old enough as me, you'll remember it. Well, that story was based on this book, Journey to the West. Now, in this story, which is actually based on a true story of a monk that journeyed to the West, they got into a certain area in West Asia, and they called that area the place of the name stealers, because when you got there, the people in this area they'd off you and they would steal your identity, and they would hide behind that identity. And I managed to find a little clip. This gentleman here, I'll play it first and I'll give you his channel.
It's a cool book. Jackie Chan's made several movies about the central characters in that book.
That's the book I'm saying, The Journey to the West.
All Westerners should read it if you want to understand the Chinese mind. It doesn't aid you understanding the CCP and those people, but it does aid you in understanding the cultural milieu in which China has arisen to the modern state here. Okay, but even in Journey to the West, there are aspects to this little story here. The Chinese had this phrase, this expression, that you had to watch out for the name stealers. We have that same expression arising from Europe in 800 AD. That was when it was written down in 800 AD. It was
recognize the time zone, 800 AD.
Written down in Europe. Watch out for the name stealers. Don't have anything to do with them. All of this kind of stuff. You're just going to get into trouble. And the name stealers here that are being referenced, and the name stealers referenced in China that goes back even further than that 800 AD. Now, this was written down in 800 AD. They may have had it for 1,000 years before that as part of the heritage in the Codex Oralinda. This is where I'm referencing it, right? But it's written down in other areas, in other literature. I think even Chaucer had a little bit of an allusion to it. But in any event, so it goes back some period of time. And these are the name stealers, okay? Because the Khazarians were this group. Now in China, they described it as if you go far enough west, you will run into these people that will invite you into their village as a traveler. They will feed you. You will have a nice drink. You have a great night. They put you in the best bed in the inn, and then they kill you. Okay? Then they kill you. They take all of your possessions and they steal your name. Now while you're having dinner with them, and they're getting you drunk and stuff, and they're drugging you up. They were known to really use drugs and be black magic kind of people, right? A lot of black magic is associated with the ability to know how certain drugs will affect the mind, et cetera, et cetera. And you can introduce them into food. So mostly a lot of magic per se is dealing with drug states for the mind. That aside, the Chinese had the understanding that if you went there, they would get your story. They would steal your name and your story. And so the Khazarians were known by the Chinese And so, but it was known on both sides. So if you were over here and you were going to try and do business with the Chinese and you went through there, you might run into one of these groups of the Khazarians that would kill you after learning everything they could about you. They would steal your story, then they would go to China, pretend to be you, make the deal, and then go back, and the deal never happened. So they're fucking both sides, really. That
Does that remind you of anything, folks? Playing both sides. So this chap's channel, I'm just going to show you out of respect. He's called MAGA Lion Hat, all one word. So MAGA as in make America great again. Why don't we do that? Lion Hat. Okay, my friends, just that's about it. People, the most searched for term on our channel for some reason is the KM, because not a lot of people know about, kind of get it. Remember what I said, folks, we love all people on this channel. If we didn't, that would be a reflection of where we were at on our spiritual journey, wouldn't it? It's like holding a mirror up saying that we're actually not very happy with our lives, and we're projecting that hate or that discontentedness onto other people. That is why we have to love all people. It's a beautiful place to get to, and hopefully we can all get there together. So this is not a criticism of any, a particular individual. It's more a kind of analysis of why are we in the state, why is humanity in the state that it's in? Because many would argue it's been infiltrated by pretenders that are selling us a line, basically. So that's it. So I'm going to have a quick look at the chat. Dun, dun. Let's have a look. Sample user. Look, there is, I've got my glasses on. Manelli Amer, you are very welcome, and thank you for being a channel supporter, paying your $1.99. Some of you pay more. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so Pele's asking a good question. Where do the Ashkenaz come into this? This is where the whole thing is confusing. If you understand the allegory in the Old Testament, you'll understand that Jew actually means an awake person, right? It's not like a physical person. It's a allegorical concept. Gentile means an asleep person, what you'd rudely refer to as a sheep, right? Egypt represents lower self, animal self, your bestial desires, your excess alcohol and substances and toxic Western diet, your anger, your bitterness on social media, your greed, your jealousy, if I could get this car, then I'll be happy. If I could have the 2 holidays a year, then all of this materialism and anger and fornication. That's your lower self. Your higher self is your one love. When you start to realize we are all the universe experiencing itself subjectively. So you are me and I am you. Now you can see why it's all about the love, right? Okay, it just is, folks. If you're not there yet, this is where we're getting to. Moses, with his staff of uprightness, so he's not online watching porn all day. He's not battering his missus. He's not, down in 12 pints of lager every night and then screaming or beating the kids, right? He's trying to be a good man. He's eating frugally, His body is producing the serotonin and DMT, the milk and the honey. Hence, he's in paradise. He's in the land of milk and honey. And he wants other people to come to this knowledge of understanding. It's all in code, folks, because back then, if you said what I'm saying now, you got taken out of the game. Even saying this kind of stuff now, you're going to be ridiculed and laughed at, and they're going to try and get rid of you, eh? But so what did he do? He led the people that wanted to be awake, the Israelites as they're referred to, he led them out of Egypt, the lower self, into the higher self, into the promised land. So the whole concept of 12 tribes of Israel is that completely allegorical? I'm not talking about modern day Israel, modern day Middle East, or from the time of Jesus onward. I mean, the actual original 12 tribes of Israel, is that like allegory for your 12 is it 12? Do you have 12 cranial nerves? Jesus had 12 disciples. It's obviously an important number. But what the Ashkenazi connection is, this is depending on where you research and what you choose to believe, or what you choose to base your understanding on. Some would say the Ashkenazis have no connection to the Middle East. If I understand it correct, and you're welcome to correct me politely, that DNA testing has shown they more likely originate from the Turkic region, east of Germany, which is kind of what we've been talking about. Allegedly, there was this book written on the KM, folks. I listened to it. I listened to it fairly recently because I'm fascinated with this stuff. It's of course it's going to be disputed. Of course, if you question the events in New York and Washington back along, it's disputed, isn't it? You're going to get called like, that's all been disproved. That's the BBC. They did a wonderful documentary on it. That's all that tinfoil hat. Not, it's a minefield, isn't it? It's a minefield trying to get your head around all of this. Which is why I say spiritual battle is just much simpler to understand. But this chap wrote this book. I listened to it in audiobook, and it's quite fascinating. It's quite fascinating. There's a lot of concepts in there, like the Kievan Rouge, which is the Eastern Russians. Interesting stuff. Like these guys would grow these huge long beards, and they would pick the fleas out and eat them. I know. But going back to your question, Pele is the allegedly have no connection with the Middle East, right? No historical connection whatsoever. That's where that comes into it, and the connection we would be looking at here is using that network to put people into positions of power whilst pretending to be of that faith. That is what we're saying. And I'll say it again, folks, we mean no disrespect to the wonderful, Jewish community or the people of Israel. I've been in Israel twice, had an absolute blast. Picked up Omri, hitchhiking through the West Bank. Omri, local Jewish Israeli lad, just got out of the army. He said, "Chris, do you like Pink Floyd?" I said, "Yeah." He went, "Good. Have 5 CDs. Give me 5 Pink Floyd CDs to play in my hire car." I was going around sleeping in the car. And then he pulled out a blimmer hash, so things got even better. People are wonderful the world over, but we're not talking about that, are we? We're talking about pretenders. If you bring buildings down on people's heads, or you're the driving force behind all major wars because you're funding both sides, you can't tell me you're in an Abrahamic faith, you liar. Because Abrahamic faith is about enlightenment. It's about beauty, peace, love, finding who you really are, and that we're all connected, and it's all about love. Do you see? This is why they're called the Pretenders. Okay, I've laboured the point, folks, but you get it. You get it. Yeah, I like this one. Look, water margin. Thank you, Isena. Yes, I do remember the water margin. Water margin is interesting. It's the history of the triads. Some of you will know that I if you've read my book, Eating Smoke, the one there in the middle, that's how I ended up mentally unwell from crystal meth addiction and working for the Hong Kong triads as a nightclub doorman in one of their clubs in Wan Chai in Hong Kong. And originally, like all good things, the triads were a rebellious group that met in the marshlands in a certain area of China to discuss how they were going to overthrow the oppressive dynasties at the time. So they were the good guys, the triads then, and to distinguish themselves, they wore bandanas on their head. Do you remember the guy in Tiananmen Square when he faced down a tank? They were wearing banners, weren't they? Which is symbolic in China of, you know, doing the right thing. So yes, the water margin, as in like the margin where the water comes, the marshland, as in the brothers of the marsh, which is another Chinese expression for the original triads. Yeah, where did all these good TV programs go? Dun, dun. Just a quick hello to Finn for sending me lots of great links. Thank you, Finn. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry, I can't show some of these comments. We've got Mike here. Look, Mike. It's all covered in Matthew 23 and JFK's Secret Society speech. So let's have a listen to that one.
Intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program.
There we go, folks. So, not surprising we had to say goodbye to that wonderful man, is it? You know, it's just... and of course, Matthew 23 was... If I can just, cover it rudimentarily, it was something like Jesus getting really angry with the Pharisees, saying, like, you just don't get it. You basically use your power to abuse people. You don't understand my Father, i.e. the all, the everything. It is Mikey says something like, you see the saucer, but you don't see the teacup. Something like this. But basically, you know, just getting at the the greed of people. The greed of people. Right, folks, that's it. I'm gonna bug out. If you could please chuck us a like, I'd really appreciate it. We've got 160 people watching. We've only got 80 likes. I know some of you are watching on telly, but if you can support the channel, there's my books. They're all on Amazon. That'll explain a bit about how I got to be sat in front of you talking. Locals, thank you to everyone that's joined our locals platform. It is free, folks, but you can pay a subscription just to get a bit of selective stuff on there, can we say. The Patreon is linked in with our Discord server, as is YouTube memberships. So that's a private chat for you guys if you want to get together and continue the conversation. Get on Patreon or become a channel member. Everybody that supports me, folks, gets 2 VIP tickets to my annual get together. All right, that's for everybody, and I look forward to seeing you. And if you can do this one, dear people, like and subscribe, click the notification bell, and we'll see you soon. Have an absolutely phenomenal weekend. Much love.